In today's video, I want to talk about how to use your music score in the most efficient way. So as pianists, there are so many things that we can learn from our score, but most importantly, there are also so many things that we can write into our score. And today I want to focus on what those things are that you can write into your score that are going to make you progress as quickly as possible in your practice session. I have seen scores that are filled with comments, and I have seen very empty scores. And today I want to tell you which things I choose to write into my music and exactly how much I write into my music in order to create the most effective piano practice experience for me. So if you're interested in that, then keep on watching. So as you can see, I'm not at home. I am actually back in Paris, in France right now, one of my favorite cities in the world. As some of you might know that have been following me for a longer time, I always love being here, and I'm playing in Paris again. I'm doing a project with the Chamber Orchestra of Paris, the Orchestre de Chambre de Paris, at the Théâtre Champs-Élysées in Paris this week. So I'm spending 4 beautiful days here filled with beautiful music, and I'm very much looking forward to that. So the reason that I'm doing this video is that I had an experience quite recently where a friend called me about a piece and asked me whether I could give them some pointers in that specific piece, because I have played it so often and I started playing it when I was quite young. And I then immediately said, you know, I could just send you over my score, because this is a score that I have been using for many years. I bought that score in paper form when I was 12 years old, I think, and it has the markings of my first teacher, Professor Kemmerling, of my second teacher, Lars Vogt, and of course my own markings as well. And when I told my friend that, she immediately said, oh my God, yes, I would love that. That would be so helpful. And it just made me think how valuable a score can be that has valuable markings in it. So I thought I should actually make a video about that, about what you can write into your score that is going to help you progress faster, but also that is going to help you recognize a piece, comprehend a piece faster. And also if you're refreshing a piece, or if you're looking at a piece 20 years later, that is going to help you get into it very quickly. Because a score obviously is like a sort of map, and you can actually help yourself with that map by marking it up in the exact right way. So first things first, of course, the most obvious thing that you can write into a score is fingerings. So I like to write fingerings into a score, however, not too many. When I was young, I remember I just loved writing a fingering on top of each and every note. That of course looks insane and doesn't make any sense in the long run. The key here is to just write down key fingerings. So if there is one thing that you do differently, then write that fingering. Or if there is a specific fingering that is going to help you with that, let's say repetition, then write that down. Or if there is a scale and you just want to make sure where you're going to put the thumb underneath, then write 4-1 or 3-1. You don't need to write 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. So just the key fingerings, but for sure, fingerings, especially for chords, for virtuoso passages, key fingerings for octaves, where you might want to remember whether it's the 5th or the 4th finger that you're using for that octave. So all these types of fingerings are very helpful to write into your score. First of all, you're writing it down, so you're kind of internalizing it in your mind. Secondly, you're visualizing it, because whenever you're practicing that specific passage, you're actually seeing the number as well. So you're seeing the fingering and you're visualizing it, and it's kind of a second stream that goes into your mind, not just your muscles doing it, but also seeing the number. And then thirdly, if you've been practicing another piece and you're getting back into that piece, you will immediately see the fingering that worked for you. So it's definitely worth it to progress faster in your practice, to figure out correct fingerings and then put those fingerings into your music in order to not, just always let the fingering be up to coincidence. Also, one of the main ways to solidify a passage is, of course, repetition. However, when we practice hard passages and change up the fingerings all the time, we're not actually repeating it. We're always playing it in a slightly different way. So one of the easiest ways to progress quickly with a virtuoso passage is to figure out the fingering that suits you the most in the very beginning, when you're just beginning to learn it. Write that into your score and repeat it and internalize it. Another very helpful thing that you can write into your score is the harmony. I'm not talking about writing down the harmony for every single chord that you're playing or every single arpeggio, but especially if there is a lot going on, it can be helpful to just kind of break it down and write down some key harmonies. Or, for example, also some key notes. If there is an extremely high note in a chord or in a passage, or an extremely low note with many bylines, I actually like to just write it down in my score. So if I have some crazy glissando going somewhere and it ends, let's say, on the highest G, I'll just write G in my score. That way I immediately know it, especially when I'm new to the piece, and I'm immediately going to get it right when practicing it. And again, it's also a visualization, and I'm going to internalize it faster. Another case where writing down the harmony can be helpful is actually a bit of a counterintuitive thing. Sometimes when we have very complicated harmonies that are written down in the notes because of the key that you're in, and because there's a modulation or something like that, and they're written down with so many sharps and so many signs, you can actually just write down the simpler version of the harmony. So for example, let's say I'm playing a C flat major chord, which just looks crazy when looking at it in the score, but actually what you hear is a simple B major. So I will then just write down, just for myself, B major, just so that I know that's what I'm actually playing and what the people are hearing, so that my fingers go there faster. I'm not saying that you shouldn't understand the harmonic connection and why it is written in that way. It's just a little trick in order to get your fingers to understand what is written in the score a little bit faster. So writing down key harmonies, key notes that are out there, up there or down there, also is very helpful, I find. Now, the third thing that you can write into your score is a little bit harder to describe, but I would describe it as keywords. Now, bear with me on that one. As I said, when I sent my friend that score, she actually called me back and she said, wow, I remember those words, because she had also studied with the same teachers as I have. And she said, I remember those words as if they were yesterday. And those very specific words that my teacher used to write into the score were so incredibly helpful. We all knew exactly what they meant and what they entailed, and they immediately paint this picture of the feeling, also the technical approach that certain passage needs. So just an example, one word that my teacher used to write into the score was the German word Strom. Now, Strom is already kind of hard to translate, because Strom can mean electricity, but it can also mean streams, a stream that is streaming somewhere. So not an online stream, obviously, a stream of water, basically. And when he wrote Strom, it basically meant that there was some kind of pull in the passage, and it was something that you couldn't avoid. It was something that is going to overwhelm you and just wash over you. So it was the mixture of the stream of water that has this incredible power, but also the electricity that is something that is very powerful. So whenever I read that word in my score, I know that this passage has such a force behind it. And it is just one short, very concise word that describes all of that. So it's important to find those words that work for you, or maybe your teacher has already created certain words for you, like my teacher had for me, and write them down in the fitting moments of the piece. So those words could be feelings. For example, it could be joy, it could be hope, it could be sadness, these types of feelings that immediately evoke something inside of you and you know how it's supposed to sound. It can also be an emotion like anger, for example, or helplessness. If I read anger or helplessness, I immediately know what type of tone I want to give that passage. You have to find out what works for you and what makes you associate the fastest and easiest way. But in my experience, these words that you write in order to describe the character of a passage, they need to be very short, 1 or 2 words or 3 words at most, very concise, very descriptive, but very concise and short, not, a paragraph of text that is going to take you 10 seconds to read, but something that while playing, you see it and you immediately know. On a technical level, my teacher also had certain things that he would write down. So for example, there was the very famous big E that he would write down, and that would stand for entspannen, and entspannen in German means release, kind of release, relax. So whenever there was a big chord or a long note where he felt like that's what we needed, he would write on top of that note the big E. And we all knew, okay, when we have that, all the muscles are loose, we're releasing all the tension. And just playing a piece and reading that in the score, for me, is so helpful because I immediately know, okay, quickly release. Something that I, of course, know to do anyway, but it's always so good to see a visual reminder and actually do it again. And the fourth thing that I would suggest to write into your score is connected to phrasing. So it is so important when you learn a piece to decide where the phrase is going, what the highest point is of the phrase, where it is starting, where it is ending. And this is also something that is very quickly going to give you a musical structure for the piece and is going to make your interpretation sound so much better. So my very simple sign for phrasing actually is just a line. It's a diagonal line, again, something that I learned from my teacher, Professor Kemmerling. And it's a diagonal line going through the note, so to speak. And that basically means this is where the phrase is going toward. In German, he called it Bezugspunkt. So it's the point that we are working toward. And it would just be a diagonal line. And I remember very often in the lesson, he would ask me, where is this phrase going? And I would say there. And if he would agree, he would just put that diagonal line there. And from then on, whenever I played it, I knew, all right, I have to make the music go towards that point. Also, another thing connected to phrasing is a tiny little crescendo, not really meaning crescendo, but it's more of just a hairpin opening. And what that meant in German, he used the word ansetzen, which basically meant it's where we're starting. So whenever he put that, it meant don't be wild there, don't open up there just yet. This is just the beginning. So you're starting kind of softly, you're placing it, and then that's when the phrase starts, and then it's going to continue until the diagonal line, which is the Bezugspunkt. Now, one last comment I want to make is if you are revisiting a piece and it's already a piece that you've marked up, but you have some new opinions, I would recommend using a different color. I'm saying this because I've been in that situation when I was still using paper scores only. I just used a different color because very often my teacher would use permanent pens, so something that I couldn't erase. If you're using a pencil, obviously you can erase it. But I must say I kind of like seeing how the interpretation develops. So I actually like seeing my old scores that have all these different markings in them from over the years in different colors, and seeing how I made slight changes in the dynamics, in the character and things like that, and how I also got new ideas over time. Of course, nowadays I'm using the iPad and I simply just erase it and write my new thing. So now I don't use different colors or anything like that. I always just have my current interpretation in my score. So these were the main things that I would suggest that you write into your score. I really hope that you found this video helpful. Let me know what you think, and also let me know how you mark up your own scores, if this is something that is important to you or not. I really realized the importance of marking up the score in the correct way for me when I had this experience with my friend, and this is why I wanted to share it in a video. And let me know your thoughts on this in the comments, and I will see you again in my next video next week. Bye!